Happy New Year to everyone. We're continuing our contemplation of Mei HaShiloach. We started our cycle in the middle, so we're still in the midst of it. But in the time of the year, we're starting from the beginning of the Torah, very exciting time of the year. We started Shabbat Bereshit last week, and now we're in Parashat Noach. In this week's portion, there's a very special verse that appears at the end, towards the end of the parasha, after Noah comes out of the ark, out of the Teva. And in of the commandments that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, he reinstitutes the first and foremost, the most primordial commandment of the Torah, which is Puru Uvu, to multiply, to marry and wedlock and multiply, be multiple and fruitful. Puru Uvu, that's again, this phrase appears for the first time in this blessing here, in this commandment to Noach. So this is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu phrases it. Puru Uvu v'shirtzu ba'aretz. And this phrasing shirtzu, which literally implies to be extremely multiple, because the word shirtzu comes from the word sheretz, which is like the small critters of earth, which are usually in the natural cycle of things. They're when they give birth, then they give birth to very, very many offsprings, like a stream of eggs. And the idiom of shirtzu means that you should be extremely multiple, like those animals. That's the simple meaning of this phrase. It's the first time it's used in the Torah as an implication or as a commandment to be very fruitful. And the Rebbe contemplates on this very special, unique phrase, which is also it could be conceived of maybe even somewhat phenomenal. It's a little bit derogatory to compare such a wonderful and primordial commandment, the first commandment of the Torah, to a sheretz, which is also, again, it's not a holy animal, it's not a pure animal, it's not something we're allowed to consume. And also the phrase, if you have a little bit of Hebrew, so the word sheretz, it's not a complimentary term. But still, this is the word used to imply the correct behavior, the correct approach to bringing children to the world, to being multiple, to being fruitful. So he contemplates on this phrase, shirtzu ba'aretz, to be like a worm in the ground, or like not a worm, again a small critter in the ground. Now what he explains is that, again, as we've been contemplating on throughout this year, so these are always very profound. Again, we try to keep it simple, but also very deep. If you contemplate on very deep concepts that he conveys in short phrasings, implying healthy psychological approaches to life, to existence, to reality. And this is, again, a beautiful contemplation he has here, that he explains the idiom, the phrase of the Torah, shirtzu ba'aretz, that one should be, again, like a small critter in the earth, or to be, he just uses the word shirtzu as minimizing yourself, being similar to a small critter connected to the earth. And he says that the problem of the generation which brought about the flood. This is what the whole story of Parashat Noach is all about. The Mabud, the flood that wipes out all of reality, all the human race, and almost all the human race, and almost all the other races, and only Noach himself is left. And it says in the Torah itself explicitly that the behavior, the problem, the main problem, the core of the problem of humanity at that time, it was Gezel Hamas, that everybody that was stealing, thieving from one another. And he says that where does this come from? And our sages elaborate on this very much, not only stealing property, but also stealing one's wife and one's identity, all sorts of, again, it was a chaotic existence. This primordial seminal existence was very chaotic, but the mentality evolved around a lack of respect for one's again, property, one's kinship, one's belongings, and the Hamas, stealing forcefully from others. And he says that, again, the core of that is coming from lustfulness or from greed, that you see someone else and what he has, and you want it, you lust it, you want to have what belongs to him, you want to take to yourself. And where's that coming from? Where's this, again, this tendency to steal, which in itself is coming from a tendency to lust what someone else has? Where is this stemming from within ourselves? So he says in the core of it is that a person just he's not satisfied with what he has in his life. And he says that a lack of satisfaction, this is, again, a very, very deep, profound concept is to understand, to try to approach life this way, and or notice that this is the way one can and should approach life. Is that why are we unsatisfied? Because we conceive the concept of satisfaction, the essential concept of satisfaction, we conceive as something that is dependent on objective criteria. So if I see someone driving a nice car, then my sensation, my experience of my lusts and my wills, my drives, everything I experience, it conveys to me, or this is how I narrate to myself, that if I want that thing, what I'm telling myself is that if I had that objective entity, if I had that car, and we're using this superficial idiom, whatever it is, if I had that thing that I'm lusting for, then I'd be subdued, I'd be happy. So I conceive, again, my simplistic understanding of myself is that my fulfillment, my satisfaction, my happiness with whatever it is that I consume, whatever it is that I take to myself, is dependent on the objective reality of that which is being consumed. So if I like that car, so it's the car that's making me like it, and therefore, if in order to be satisfied, I have to get that car. But what he says, again, he brings a story, a beautiful story from the Midrash, that is conveying a concept that's mentioned in various places throughout the Chazal. That we'll just tell the story because it's so pretty. This is the story that the Torah, the Midrash says to convey this idea. He says that Rabbi Yossi, one of our greatest sages, he once had a student. And the student was he was a bit dense. He wasn't so capable in the classroom, and you could see that he was He was confused while he was teaching. He was conveying his ideas, Rabbi Yossi, and the student wasn't catching them. So after the class, he asked him he's a new student. So he asked him, what's the problem? So the student says that where I came from, he was probably very highly recommended to this school. So Rabbi Yossi was assuming he'd be very, very proficient and very talented, but he didn't see that. So he asked him, what happened? Why weren't you catching on to class today? So the student tells him that the difference in air, he came to Tiberias. He said the difference in air from where I come from, my homeland, and here is so great that my head isn't focused. I can't. The different atmosphere, the different climate is perplexing me. So I'm not concentrated. I'm not settled, and I'm not concentrated. So Rabbi Yossi asks him, "Oh, so you must come from Switzerland or something, from a wonderfully airy, beautiful place." And he says, no, where I come from, the air is so dense, it's so dark, it's so muddy, that we have to, again, this is the idiom appears in Chazal, that when newborn babies are born, we have to cover them, protect their heads, so that all the mosquitoes don't bite them to death. That's the idiom it's used. It's so dangerous, because the air is so mucky there, in the swampland that I live. And from here, Rabbi Yossi learns this teaching, that nonetheless that this person comes from such a mucky area, still, when he changed his homeland, he still became perplexed. He upgraded. But nonetheless, even though he upgraded to clearer air and healthier air, still it unsettled him. And from here he learns, Chen makom al yoshuvav, is the phrase in Hebrew, that a person is fond of his homeland. And in other places in Chazal, that's mentioned in all sorts of contexts. That a person, he is fond of that which he purchases. This is a very basic concept, but it takes time to fathom it. Like we said in the beginning, our initial intuitive experience of self is that we purchase what we're fond of. But that's not true. The truth is that a person is fond of what he purchases. So the idioms I mentioned before is a car, or what Chazal say, a person's wife. That's one of the examples. That every wife is calmly to her husband. She's beautiful to her husband. Not calmly, so she's beautiful to her husband. Every husband finds his wife beautiful. Now, why? He doesn't marry her because she's beautiful. Because he marries her. His choice, his concentration, that he funnels himself into that place, that decision itself makes it something that he's fond of. So if you're debating which car to buy, so there are like pros and cons, and you consider, and then you make a decision. And you drive out of the automobile salesman, and on your way home, you get this sensation, I made the best choice. This is the best car I could have gotten. And now you interpret it to yourself that this was like an objective reality. I chose correctly. And my sense of satisfaction is a result of the objective reality. But that's not true. What's actually happening is that your choice is funneling your personality to make it fond, make it something and it's pleasing to you. So the choice itself, the willingness to concentrate and move forward with what I choose to move forward with, is in itself what makes my choices something beautiful, something lustful, something that I'm pleased with, something I'm satisfied with. So satisfaction, more than being a result of objective reality, it's a result of funneling myself correctly into what I choose to funnel myself towards. This is again the idea that he's conveying here, that the core misunderstanding, misinterpretation that was in the basis of all of this chaotic generation that preceded Noah, which ended up in wiping out of this generation, was this attitude, approach to life, where I sense that my satisfaction is dependent on objective criteria that I now need to obtain, and then I find myself constantly jealous and lustful towards everything around me, anything that ignites a yearning within me. But if I understand that a person's satisfaction is dependent on his choices. When I choose something, that choice itself makes what I chose fun to me because it's mine. And if I just focus on that and concentrate on that, then I'll never stray from my portion in life. So my wife, my children, my home, my commodities, everything I have, that, why are they precious? They're precious because I've poured myself into them. And that's what gives them value. Not that they give me value, I give them value in my devotion, in my concentration. And this is how he explains that verse. Shirtzu ba'aretz. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he blesses us. He commands us and blesses us to be fruitful. But in what way? That we need to concentrate and minimize ourselves, learn to focus ourselves into the land. So the land is that your portion be like a small critter, like a focused critter onto what you have, and choose it and concentrate and consolidate yourself into that area which you've chosen, and then you'll be satisfied. But if you conceive satisfaction as something that's a result of objective reality, then you'll constantly be strayed all over the place. You get that car, you want the other car, because it's just not true. That's not how a person's psyche works. A person's satisfaction is a result of his choice. So you need to consolidate yourself, minimize yourself, and that's what breeds your satisfaction. So nonetheless, we need to be very fruitful, very multitude, but it needs to be done in a way where we choose our path. Choose my shlichus, choose who to marry, choose a profession, choose whatever it is that you're choosing, and devote yourself to it, and that will grant it the value that will then satisfy you. Instead of a delusionary dependence on so-called objective value that's supposed to sustain me, which doesn't really exist. So this is again a beautiful point of wisdom for our hopefully less chaotic world after the flood that we live in today. Bezrat Hashem, everybody should have a blessed week, a focused week, full of satisfaction, healthy, personal, choiceful satisfaction. Bezrat Hashem, Shavua Tov.